Hi, sorry, I can't find my glasses. I can't find my glasses right now. Maybe it's just as well because I don't want to distract myself. I just want to talk. Sorry. It'd be funny if that were my. Oh, I think I found my glasses. Hold on. Well, okay. It's probably over there, but I don't want to waste time. It's taken so much time to get this computer booted up. Want to talk about self-reflection. I want to talk about pain. I want to talk about something in Kabbalah, which was two counterpoint nodes. In the tree of life, there are two columns. You can see it's better as a chart, but basically, there are two columns of nodes, and at the top in the head, um, there's one node that means one column that refers to an inspiration, like an inspiration, a flood of thought, and the other one is more restrictive. See, one column is restriction and the other is outpouring. One node in the at the top, like basically right here, would be a flood of an inspirational thought, pure inspiration. The other node receives that as light and light energy and forms it into a let's gestate into a no, let me take that back. I take that back. Restricts it in a certain way so that it can gestate, so that it's like a pyramid, so that down here, um, I never thought of that before. It's near the throat, it's near the mouth. The resulting child of these two is knowledge. The word for it is da'at. And then below here, this one, one of them in the outpouring column, is it, this part deals with the mind. This part deals with I think direction, vague on the direction outward into the, I think, direction orientation. And then, well, I don't want to stand up, but there are two more down below, compared with, allegorized to the legs, and they represent more how you go out into the world, or how you express yourself out into the world. And each of these two nodes, there are three columns. There's the mind, and then the arms, and then the legs. Each one has a lower central point where they balance. And so you can think of them as three triangles. um, and so I don't want to talk about the mind right now. I want to talk about the two arms. Um, there's one that's there's one node, as I said before, that represents outwardness in terms of activity, and the other one represents restriction. And a number of times in life, well, let me give you context, without giving away details about who was saying what, whatever. So I want to respect people's privacy. So um, this morning, somebody texted me and texted me, and I felt, and I'll leave gender out of it. Could be male, could be female. I'll just say this other person. Um, so this other person texted me, and I hate to use they, but as a pronoun, because it means plural, third person, but because it's grammatically incorrect. But I'll use they just because I'll just use this other person. So anyway, um, um, had been, um, something I wanted. It was misinterpretation. So, we talked on the phone, and um, fortunately, there was still just there's misinterpretation, and I'll get through that. I won't dwell on that. But something perhaps therapeutic, I don't know. But at some point towards the end of the call, this other person said something that was counter to certain philosophical truisms that I have in life. Um, and I want to share those truisms with you. How much more what more test or what more proof, I guess, what more evidence or what more proof can one give, that as long as you're true to yourself and you're listening to yourself and you're self-aware, you're very much self-aware, how much more um, proof or evidence can you give that the intention that you're aware of was honest and true and sincere? I don't know. That's a really good question. When somebody's convinced that that you're acting with an ulterior motive, um, I want to mention some facets of my some truisms, like a list of different truisms, and I thought maybe that would be good and helpful, along with learning how to center your camera. um, and I admit I do have like some degrees of OCD. I want to come clean about that. Um, oh, and speaking of coming clean, the stupid Safari bookmark sync agent is quitting unexpectedly. It keeps popping up, and I have to keep clicking quit, like right here, or ignore or something or other. So forgive me that that's popping up. But anyway, um, so something that was said in the phone call, um, finally I had enough, and I just let out this enormous cry of anguish, not to this other person, but just that I do care about other people very much. And there was a thing about ego where this other person was saying that I had too much ego, or I thought that I was better than other people. I don't think that at all, quite the opposite. And I want to talk about that soon, but it was just so antithetical to my worldview. I wish there were better words and phrases that we had in society for saying worldview or philosophy. And I'm suspecting that whenever I use the word philosophy, which is a very wonderful word for it, it's a combination. What I'm looking for is a combination of the word attitude and philosophy. Their worldview, something like, what I mean is something like your, this keeps popping up, something like your belief system about life and about the world and your interaction with the world. I'm very philosophical. That's assuredly one reason why Kabbalah fascinates me so much. I want to spill out a lot about myself and my beliefs and so forth. Um, when I was very young, these things, the things that you immediately see, oh, I have so much to talk about right here. I'm glad I'm sharing this. And I'm glad it's live. I don't have to edit anything. It's all raw, aside from this stupid thing that keeps popping up. All right. You're probably sick of me saying that. Um, I believe that we, at a very young age, first of all, I believe that we are born, I'm Jewish. I believe we're born with a clean slate. In fact, beyond that, I suspect that we are, I don't say believe, I think there's a difference between belief and suspect. Lately, in the past decade or some, I don't know, since who knows when, I've wanted to use my words more accurately to describe, more appropriately to describe exactly what I mean. And I think I've always, at least since high school, more conscious area, conscious in my memory. I've been. It's like karate. You communication is one art form that that could cause wars, that could cause arguments and lifelong, hurt and so forth. We should be careful with our words. That's why, in addition to that, I'm proud of being able to apply the best word or the best phrase to communicate what's going on. Um, I think from what I've heard, science has disproven the idea of, one part of the mind deals with, right half and left half of the brain. But there's something called, I think, the Broca's area in the brain. Anyway, it seems clear from our modern neurological science that there are certain parts of the brain that deal with language, and I'm proud that I have capability of applying words specifically, strategically, to be very clear. Um, and that goes along with storytelling. A good storyteller, an effective storyteller, um, has to be very clear, is very clear about communicating themes and ideas. So, um, this I guess focus on that reminds me of some time in the past, somebody from my past, and I felt very disheartened because this other person, there was miscommunication, there was misunderstanding, and I couldn't talk with this person in um I couldn't, like, I fantasized that we could both sit down and talk things through, and I wanted to, like, through third person, I was trying with third person or writing in letters to communicate so that there's no more further harm, there's no further misunderstanding, which further exacerbate the situation that's already broken. I wanted to repair it, and one way to repair a relationship is through the words we use, the phrases, the being honest and sincere with each other and genuine with each other, and that goes along with language and communication and the words we use and so forth. So, um, where was I? So we also should be self-aware, aware of what our thoughts are, what motivates us, and so I know I'm going to be jumping around a little bit. Sorry about that. It's this part of the mind. Remember, in Kabbalah, it's this instant outpouring, and it needs this part. This is the editing part. This is the outpouring part, and this is the editing. This is like the rough draft. This is what, like, they call the vomit draft, where you just write out. Who cares? Just as it comes, you just write it out, and then this part is the editing part in Kabbalah, and then this is the final product. And so, um, I don't want to have. Whoops, I'm confused. I don't want to have the editing part. I mean, to a certain extent, I want to protect these people's privacies and so forth and identities. I don't want to have, and yes, my elbow's ripped. Sorry. This editing part to muddle this part that has some very important things to say. It's interesting. I've never seen people really use gestures like that when they're communicating with each other. It's interesting. But anyway, food for thought for later. Look into Stan Tenon's work in Hebrew and the Torah. He talks a lot about gestures and the his he's now deceased, sadly, but his fascination and his work about what um, about the way the mind and the hand gestures, our physical gestures are an outward expression of our minds, so forth. It's fascinating. But anyway, going back, I have several. All right, let me go back to that earlier statement I had about the our very early stages, like toddler stage. Um, I um toddler stage. I I'm Jewish, so I just have this, and even before I knew I was Jewish, I had this, I think I had these early primitive forms of what I my philosophy now, that, um, we are just born with a clean slate, and we have, um, just instinctive, natural, healthy instincts. Sorry, that's sounds redundant. We have these healthy, natural instincts. One is to be curious, and another is to feel pride in something we did well, and we want others to feel happy for us, and we're sad when they don't. We're sad in moments when something seems broken and not right, and we want to see, we want to meet new people, and we want to bond with people. Those are natural instincts. And so I I felt, it's the way I was growing up. And then I've talked about this before. In school, it seemed I felt like ostracized, and I felt that others either didn't understand me or didn't accept. When you're a child, the two become muddled together. Like, you it was, I guess, a combination of they didn't understand me, or at least from my perception, they which I've learned later might not have been so accurate. It's just at the time, um either I was misinterpreting, or I was hard on myself, or I don't think I was hard on myself. I think it was just my reaction to how they I've never explored this part of my past really in depth. What I remember is feeling insecure around them in school. I remember that they seemed not to include me, or at least I remember sometimes they would mock me, and they would tease me, and I felt like the butt of a joke. I very much felt like the butt of a joke. A certain examples I can come up with. I remember like them saying, look who's behind you," or "Look who's next to you," ew, or whatever. And that's clearly ostracizing, can give you an ostracizing feeling. But outside from that, I felt very happy. I just felt insecure around the other classmates in school because of how they would treat. There's a safety factor, like an emotional. It's not necessarily physical. It was typically emotional safety factor. Where there's so many times, come to think of it now, there's so many, and I don't want to forget the rest of what I wanted to talk about, but there were so many times now, and I don't want to dwell on this. I just want to talk all about it now in this one video and get it out of my mind. For you as a learning experience, to say that you're not alone, and I'll do my best. I'll do my very best to. This is like a mind meld. Maybe I'll put that in the description, that this is a mind meld, a Star Trek reference, but basically meaning that I'm sharing so much of my mind, the way it works, that you can see into it, and you can see how my mind works. Um, I remember at the time, um, as I was saying before, ooh, look who's next to you, or whatever. And there was that, and then other kids having fancier stuff. Trapper began with like trapper keepers in early elementary school, and the toys that they had, even though my mom spent money on me, um, that she extended herself financially, I'm sure, so that I would not have to feel like I lack anything that the others don't have, because that could be emotionally stunting for me later in life. She was a very smart woman, and I didn't feel like that. I felt a slight tinge. It was more so that I felt like with friends, when you go to visit somebody's house, and they have a bigger house, or they have like a full family, and I was just with my mom. I I didn't feel like lesser. It was more like I lacked something, and I wished that I had something. I wish that I had a nice house and a car and two parents and siblings. So, but we'll we'll put aside the siblings, because I benefited a lot from being my mom's only child. I did not have to compete for attention, and I guess I have to factor that into. I didn't have to compete for attention. It's in a very different experience from what a lot of other people had. Um, and so I believe, of course, I was growing up with television and film. I planned to create sorry, I repeated myself because I was doing this, so I wanted to repeat it to make it clear in the microphone. I wanted to, where was I? I wanted to make a video this weekend about my creativity, something like, there was Pee Wee as himself, that documentary, that two-part, really long documentary he made before he died. Um, so I hope YouTube doesn't doesn't strike me for this video for saying unalived. He finally was no longer alive. Too late. I already said that. Anyway, it was a very long video, and he explored things. So I wanted to do something like that. Frankly, I want more people to watch my channel, as any YouTube creator does. And I want to be more intimate in sharing my thoughts and so forth. I'm not one of these creators who pokes fun at other people, or who does cheap stuff. I don't want to say cheap stuff. I'm not one of these YouTube creators who creates AI stuff just for the sake of getting more views. I'm not one of these creators that just goes with whatever the direction the wind is blowing in order to get more views. I'm not one to buy chatbots. First of all, I don't have the money. Secondly, primarily, I don't want to um, come across as dishonest in any way, or disingenuous in any way. If I don't have that many viewers, if I don't have that much attention, I'd feel dismay, because not more people are knowing about my thoughts and ideas and what I'm sharing. I mean, like, any creator, any artist wants to wants the most number of people to be exposed to that artist's work. It's just natural. Um, so I also don't want to sacrifice this channel's integrity. So I wish more people would be watching this channel. I'll learn and I'll grow as I develop the channel. But anyway, I figured that by sharing more about myself and my creativity, that might be a nice, fun video for people to watch, and it would be all in one video. It'd be maybe a long video, but it would be a video. And so um, I goofed up in the announcement because I used Claude AI to come up with a date, and it goofed up on the date. It said like July 1st, Tuesday or something. It was off. So and then yesterday I I hid the announcement in the feed, in the YouTube feed, and I didn't want anybody to be confused by the date. Is it Thursday or is it July 1st? Whatever. So, which is Wednesday, June 30th would be it would be totally confused. Would be Tuesday. It would be totally confusing. So I just took it down, and I figured it was like an impulsive idea, but anyway, I started creating it ahead of time, and then I would post it on a certain date, like a launch date, a nice premiere launch date. Yay! I can advance in my skill in using YouTube, creating YouTube videos. But right now, like this morning, I just felt so down and mentally distraught. I'm just reeling, and I'm glad that I hid that. And sometime in the future, I want to really script it and do it well, do a video well about me talking about myself growing up and creative pursuits, and how that developed into the kind of creative person I am now. And um I feel so down and ugh from that phone call. I just need to heal right now. So I'm very thankful that I didn't obligate myself, and I hope I'm not letting anybody down. I took it down yesterday, fortunately. Anyway, that announcement of an upcoming video. Anyway, um, it's very important for people to be self-aware, and I started this channel. I called it Introspection with Jeff, and that's exactly it. I wanted to examine my own thought process, and I was interested in psychology at the time, and so that's why I called it that. And there's somebody else who said something like it's therapeutic, and it is therapeutic, I guess. Um, then I changed it, and I've gone through a series of therapists and so forth, and um, so there's some okay. So going back to my philosophy and my truisms, I think about life. I think we're all born with a clean slate, except we have certain positive, aside from a certain, real psychopaths. That's a whole other story. But I think innately each of us wants to do well, wants wants to be thought of well by others, is curious, and wants to be helpful, wants to improve the world, wants is proud of when we do something well. And so that's the way I've been. And I thought that everybody thought the way I did, and optimistic. And there's a special relationship I had with my mom very, very early as a toddler. She encouraged me, she let me be, and to let me grow at my own pace. And I was growing very well. Not to say that I'm not growing now very well, but at the time I was smart, and I didn't think of myself as, I didn't think of myself as smart because I did not have enough exposure to other people to compare myself to. I just thought of myself. I didn't think of myself in terms of comparing myself to other people. I just I just was aware that I liked Return of the Jedi, and I liked practicing sort of fake sword fighting, and I liked reading books, and I enjoyed the supernatural, and I liked UFOs, and I enjoyed reading that, and that was fun for me. And I knew that I didn't like certain foods. I'd eat them, if need be. But I liked ice cream, and as a child, I liked mayonnaise sandwiches, and I liked ketchup, and I remember this one friend I had in early elementary school. I liked Transformers, and I could talk with him about that. And I liked V, and I liked watching television. V, the series, and V, the motion, so forth. Final Battle, and so forth. And I liked watching television, and sometimes I could go to the movies because I really liked a certain movie, and I would see it several times. And I liked my mom, and I liked talking with my mom. That was my mindset. And um, I didn't have any sibling to compare myself to, or feel down or feel better than anybody else. I just knew that I liked these things, and I knew what I didn't like. And I just filled my life, I gravitated towards, I filled my life with what I did enjoy. And the things like school, a lot of times, I didn't like it. I'd rather be writing, especially later on in middle school and high school. I enjoyed writing, and I enjoyed, I knew I enjoyed Star Trek and Married with Children and Night Court and Get Smart and Nick at Night. And I enjoyed doing those things. And my mom and the Dick Van Dyke Show and Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie and the Muppet Show. And I enjoyed earlier before that, I enjoyed Jim Henson's. I guess it is kind of turning into a creative memoir of my creativity. As a early elementary school, I enjoyed watching. It's more than just like. I enjoyed watching The Muppet Show and Jim Henson and Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom and Star Wars and George Lucas, primarily Star Wars, but um, and these inventive, creative people, artists, truly true artists. And I knew I enjoyed that, and I'd rather be doing that than being in school. But it's something you had to do. It was a given. There's no question about it. So I just went through school, and I didn't feel any motivation to do well in school. I just figured you have to do well. I had this belief that you had to earn, you had to perform well in school and get good grades, obviously, or else if you don't do, I mean, this is not from really my mom pushing me. Sometime during high school, I remember she would have a nice talk. Could you promise you'll pull your grades up? She never yelled at me at all. She never spanked me. She never punished me at all. There was an understanding from real infancy, I'd say, that um, she encouraged me and what I enjoyed doing. She was fully aware of what I enjoyed doing. She embraced what I enjoyed doing, and um, she boy, I really hope this thing is recording. It says live and so forth. Recording, it's recording. Sometime, maybe in a week from now, I'll get some views. My views, and I thank you. My other video that I was really surprised and thankful. Some days ago, I think last week, I did a really long video. I don't even remember what at this point because I'm really engaged in this right now. But I got something like 50 views within a minute or so of ending the stream. I was really impressed by that. Thank you very much. Because I see the counter up here and it says 0 person, 0 thumbs up, and I don't know. It's the way the system, the YouTube studio works. I guess it's not being up to date. Anyway, um the important thing is I'm getting this out of my system. The important thing is that those people who do watch this, um, maybe they'll get something out of it, and it's something that I keep buried a lot of times, and I don't talk about it openly. Um, but my mom, would share those things. Oh, in school, so she would say, "Promise you'll get your grades up." She would just showed concern. That was it. That was all. But I never felt motivated. There were some teachers that I liked over other teachers. Um, I liked writing and I enjoyed art. And some of the teachers there I enjoyed, I guess, because of the subject itself. But most of the time, it was just a chore. I never, that's another important thing to mention. Sorry for coughing there. I'll cough further away from the microphone, but I I tried my best. I'll admit I never study. I didn't really study as much as I should have. I don't know why. Nowadays, I would have spent more time studying. For a long time, I thought that I would come across as perhaps as too smart or too whatever. Maybe that relates to why I didn't really put time into studying. I had this belief that maybe from television or whatever, I think it's probably from television. I had this belief that um, one shouldn't, you know, study, one shouldn't come across as being a nerd. That meant now, of course, nerd means something more positive, and I'm glad it's changed. But like one of the worst things you could be called, at least my experience growing up was being a nerd, because that would mean that you're an outcast, you're ostracized, nobody wants to talk with you, and they don't understand what you're talking about. So I didn't want to be thought of as a nerd. So thinking back, um, if I were homeschooled by my mom, I would have learned a lot more. I would have studied a whole lot more. And I probably would have done better at tests. I've thought about this too. There was a working relationship, and I think I would have benefited. I would not have, I guess, gotten the important, crucial social exposure and build up certain social skills if I had been purely home skilled. So I'm thankful for that. But aside from that, um, had I been homeschooled, I would have I would have been some periods of my high school and my schooling would have been better, and my grades would have been a lot better. I just remember my mom saying, "Promise you'll pick up your grades," and that was one thing she would say, and then some. She wouldn't go on and on about it. It's just quarterly when the report card would come around and so forth. That's when she would come in and we'd have a talk, and she would say, "Promise you'll pick up your grades." The other thing she would say is in that tone of voice too. The other thing she would say is, "You don't want a gas pumping job." And I want to say something now. In school, somewhat in middle school, but certainly in high school, I wanted to move on beyond high school. I wanted to move on beyond school. I was already writing speculative scripts, spec scripts for Night Court and for Star Trek: The Next Generation, and just some shows that were even off the air, not even in production anymore, from 30 years ago. Well, 19, yeah, 25 years ago. And just for the fun of it. But I enjoyed script writing, and um, I saw myself as like in the Dick Van Dyke Show. Rob Petrie his career was as a television writer, and he would in the show he would go to work. It was in New York City, but he would go to work. It was a sitcom, and he had Buddy Sorrell and Sally Rogers, and the three of them would have their faults and their tensions and so forth. I mean, it was a it was a sitcom. Um, you have to have some kind of conflict in order to portray how you work through a problem. And so, but overall, it was a nice working relationship. They were all three of them were friends, and I wish I could live in a world like that. Um, I wish I could live in a world, and that's the way I thought the world was. In high school, I would read books and I would um watch specials on TV, the making of Star Wars or whatever, and um I saw people, there were true, like, sometimes there were um disappointments, and oh, I wish they'd made this the way I wanted it to, and so forth. And people, scripts get changed and so forth. But I felt, I saw the world as like that. You do good, and of course, Star Trek's full. I'll answer that later, but Star Trek philosophy. What is Star Trek about? It's a crew of people who trust each other, who are loyal to each other, who have bonded well, and they know each other, and they're good, deep, close friends, and they explore the universe, and they face danger, and through these adverse situations, they pull together, and it's about exploring the unknown. That satiates the curiosity in us, and the feeling of wanting to do well is expressed in Star Trek and be recognized for having done well. And we're sad when we don't do well. We're shamed, or we're disappointed when we tried to do something and we failed at doing it, and it didn't fix the problem. And those are universal feelings. And so that's why I and Star Trek is so good at expressing it. Television is just good at television's purpose is to demonstrate how we can overcome conflict. Um, that's why I don't like some of the stuff on television now. It seems so empty, and I wanted to do a movie. I wanted to do a movie, not a movie review, because I haven't seen the movies yet, but I have watched a little bit of the um, reaction to Supergirl, and I feel so powerless right now, admittedly, because I have this optimistic attitude that fits with Superman. When I was a toddler, I remember I was in Winnipeg and I was talking about Superman, and I thought of the Christopher Reeve movie or movies. By that point, I don't remember. I think there were two movies by that point. Um, and that was a very heroic character to me, and I always gravitated towards Superman because he exemplifies the best in us, like our ideal. And we may not be able to reach there yet, but they changed this because of the red Krypton sun or whatever. That was a revision in around the 1950s or 60s. But the in the I'm sorry, I have to check just in case it's something important um here. I just want to check. Oh, um, okay. I'll continue this later on. Okay. Bye for now.